Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 132 of the podcast, or you're joining me here on YouTube. Try to test out the new YouTube creator studio, beta studio maker, live stream, whatever the new platform they're trying to push on us is, but haven't been able to figure it out yet. So we're going with the old school method. Every week I keep bailing out. It asks like, do you want to use the new beta creator studio platform thingy? And every week I try it for 2 or 3 minutes and it doesn't work. In any case, today is Sunday, March 24th, and I'll be going solo this week again. Jeff the Animal Wilson has some family obligations going on, so everybody send some positive vibes his way and wish him the best. If you want to reach out to Jeff and let him know how much you miss him here on the show, you can reach him at animal_Wilson on Twitter. I know I will be doing so, or I'll probably just text him, but I've definitely been missing Jeff because there's nobody to bounce ideas off of, and there's nobody here to laugh at my jokes, even when they're not that great. So in any case, I'll just have to keep laughing at my own jokes, which I've gotten used to, being a father and all. It kind of comes with the territory. I think it's actually, there's no manual for being a father, but I think if there were, that would be part of it. You have to make puns out of pretty much everything, and you're basically required to laugh at your own jokes. I think rules 1 and 2 in my book, if I were writing the book on parenting, which I'm not, I'm here to talk about mixed martial arts and a little bit of alcohol and maybe some other stuff. I don't know yet, but we had Fight Night 148 last night in Nashville, Tennessee at the Bridgestone Arena, and it was headlined by Anthony Pettis and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I didn't know how to feel about this one exactly going in. The breakdown I gave you guys last week, I kept it a little bit vague, and that was intentional because I really didn't know how to see this one going down. What I did say to you guys was that, on paper, it seems like Stephen Thompson would win this one handily because he's the bigger guy. He's been fighting at welterweight longer. But one point I did make last week is that Anthony Pettis saw something in Wonderboy that made him think he could beat him. And that's why he called his name. Sometimes you just feel like you have another guy's number. And, those gut feelings aren't always right. But when it's a guy like Anthony Pettis who has been in there with everybody, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a resume more impressive than that of Anthony Showtime Pettis. This guy has been through wars. He's been a champion in multiple organizations. Been there, done that, highlight reels, Wheaties boxes, you name it. He hasn't won all those fights on his resume, but the fact that he's been in there with all these killers and he's still here calling out one of the toughest guys in the sport, one of the most difficult puzzles to solve, maybe in the history of the UFC. If you think about guys that are just really difficult to figure out, you have to put Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in that conversation because not a lot of people have been able to figure it out. And even the people who have figured it out, they haven't been able to do it like impressively. It's basically like avoid him and score points on him without letting him score points on you and maybe bum rush him a couple of times. That's the formula that Tyron Woodley kind of put together. And we haven't seen too many other people able to figure that out. I mean, he's knocked out the current middleweight champion, Robert Whittaker. He's got some crazy highlight reel knockouts himself. So Pettis decides, I'm done making the cut to featherweight. He moves back up to lightweight, gets in there with Tony Ferguson in one of the craziest fights of the year easily, and maybe of all time. It had kind of an unfortunate ending with Pettis breaking his hand and everything like that. But then he decides, you know what? Coming off of this recovery of this broken hand, I want to get in there with Stephen Thompson, who, like I said, one of the hardest puzzles to solve in the history of the sport, in my opinion. Just not a lot of people have been able to figure this guy out. And it took Anthony Pettis nearly 2 rounds to figure out what to do against this guy, because Stephen Thompson has a very awkward style. He stands almost completely sideways. He has his hands at his hips, and his hands are so fucking fast. I always forget how fast Stephen Thompson's hands are until I go back and watch his fights. He's able to move in and out of the pocket so quickly, and he doesn't really move his head much. Most people are, if they're hard to hit, it's because they have evasive head movement. They move their head off the center line. Stephen Thompson kind of moves his whole body off of the center line. I've talked about this a couple of times in the past as well. So it's a very awkward style to adjust to. He was moving in and out on Pettis and just tagging him up. He was landing his jab at will, that weird jab that comes from strange angles. He busted up Pettis's face. And Pettis had kind of an interesting approach where he was hitting Thompson with rear leg kicks, which is a long way away if you think about it, because Thompson stands far away. He's good at using his range to keep distance. And since he's standing completely sideways, that rear leg is really far away. But Pettis, that's how he was closing the distance. He was getting in to throw that kick. He was getting caught, with some jabs as well when he came in to do that. But what wound up happening was Stephen Thompson was kind of anticipating every time Pettis was coming in that he wasn't getting struck in the face. And I think it made him relax a little bit more with keeping his hands down. And the ending sequence was just phenomenal. And I don't want to say that I saw it coming, but I could feel something coming, because this is a rare fight for me where I was on the edge of my seat this entire fight. I just felt like at any given moment, something was going to explode. And then with 5 seconds left in the second round, that's exactly what happened. So Stephen Thompson kicks Anthony Pettis. Pettis backs up into the cage and then basically bounces off and comes forward with a Superman punch that wasn't really a Superman punch, because a Superman punch is usually a straight punch. This was a Superman punch setup where he leapt up into the air and forward towards Wonderboy, but then threw a hook. So even if Wonderboy were to use that jab that he had been using to keep Pettis at distance, the hook would have kind of come around it. And he just came in so fast. Wonderboy didn't have time to react, and then he was put out cold. This is a guy, to put this into perspective, how impressive this is a guy with over 80 professional fights, 57-0 as a kickboxer, over 20 mixed martial arts fights, or maybe 20 exactly. Never been knocked out. And Anthony Pettis was able to put him out cold. Now, this is a guy who a year ago, a little over a year ago, was fighting at 145 pounds. That was probably one of the bigger mistakes of his career. Obviously, he had trouble making that weight, and he didn't make it, which cost him, a potential interim title with Max Holloway when he fought him. Since he didn't make the weight, he wasn't eligible for that title if he were to win that fight. So moves up to 170 pounds, knocks out a guy that nobody's been able to figure out. Tyron Woodley put Wonderboy on his ass, and people have touched him up a little bit, but nobody's been able to put this guy out in 80 fights. Anthony Pettis, former featherweight, is able to come up to the welterweight division and put him out cold. Now, a lot of the dialogue before this fight was about how much bigger Stephen Thompson would be, and he would be just too much for Pettis. But if you look at the evidence we've been seeing lately, I mean, if you just look as recently as last week, we saw a guy in Jorge Masvidal who has fought at lightweight, knock out a guy in Darren Till, who is essentially a middleweight that sucks all the way down to 170 pounds. So you have a guy who's fought at 155. You have a guy who should be fighting at 185. Size didn't matter there. The guy moving up had the power advantage. And the guy who is bigger has a disadvantage when it comes to taking shots because he's sucking himself out more. His brain is not as hydrated. And you're starting to see a trend here. And I would really love to see a lot more guys move up in weight like Anthony Pettis does. A lot of the most successful fighters we're seeing now are making these moves. You look at guys like Kelvin Gastelum. You look at Robert Whittaker. Whittaker is another guy. He got knocked out by Wonderboy at 170 pounds. He moves up to 185. Now he's a champ. Gastelum, same thing. He was sucking himself out. He wasn't getting knocked out at welterweight, but he was having a hard time with his cardio and everything like that. He moves up to 185. He's going to be fighting for the title soon. There's just so many examples of guys and girls alike who have had success in moving up in weight, and they feel so much better and they feel so much stronger. Anthony Pettis is not a guy who was knocking people out with punches. That was just not his thing. He would knock people out with flashy kicks and things like that. And he had a lot of submissions off his back. He wasn't knocking people out with punches. I can't remember a time where that's happened. If you can, feel free to correct me. Reach out to me on social media and let me know a time that happened. Definitely not any time. Here, I'll even take a look at his record. And yeah. Joel Lozon, he finished with punches, but it was really a head kick that set it up. That's going back to 2012. You'd have to go back into WEC days. I don't know if he's all right. TKO by punches against Gabe Wallbridge in 2008 at GFS Seasons Beatings. Great name for a that's a great name for a fight promotion. Seasons Beatings. Wonderful. In any case, so Pettis moves up and he's got knockout power in his hands all of a sudden. Maybe he's always had it, but because he was depleting himself so much to make lightweight. Now Pettis wants to, he doesn't care. He'll take, he wants the winner of Justin Gaethje and Edson Barbosa. I like that call out. That's a great move for him. It's kind of a tough spot for Pettis moving into welterweight because two of the top guys in the division are his training partners in Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren. And, those two guys have been at the top of the division. Woodley has for a while, and Askren, at undefeated has to be in that conversation. I think he's ranked number 6 right now. So he said he wants that fight or, he wants another fight at welterweight, and he wants to see, whatever Dana White wants for him. I would like to see him at welterweight, but it's kind of murky when you got 2 of your teammates in the top 10. How does Pettis fit into that picture and fight guys while also avoiding, fighting his teammates? Maybe we get Pettis and Masvidal down the line. That would be a fucking awesome fight. I would love to see that. Actually, I just thought of that right now. That would be pretty spectacular. As for Wonderboy, I don't think he loses any stock here, but man, this is a tough one. This sets him back quite a ways. I know he has it in his head that he wants to be a champion one day. I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility, but 36 years old and coming off a knockout like that, he's got to take a good 6 months off with no contact. So it could be another 8 months to a year before we see Stephen Thompson back in there. And then he's got to climb back up there. He's going to have to have an impressive performance over, a good handful, a few impressive performances over a good handful of top contenders to get back in there for a title. It was looking good for Wonderboy too, man, because nobody wanted to see him and Woodley in there for a third time. And now you have a new champion this was the time for Wonderboy to make a run. So you got to feel bad for Wonderboy. Um, you can feel bad for Wonderboy and still feel good for Pettis, and be happy for him because he's been through a lot of trials and tribulations in his career as of late. But Wonderboy is such a nice fucking guy, man. They interviewed him like at the hospital. I think his dad posted a video on social media, and he's like, "I didn't see a dang thing coming," and he was just so, you know, polite Southern gentleman about it. You kind of you got to feel for the guy a little bit. I mean, he's a hard guy to root against because he's just so nice. But yeah, he's gonna have to definitely take some time off, heal up, and then come back. He'll have to have an impressive performance against the top guy in this division, which is no easy task, for sure. He hasn't had a finish in a long time. He had that controversial decision with Darren Till in his last fight, which I thought he won, but it took place in England. So in any case, awesome main event. And it was ESPN Plus, so this thing was over, I think 11 o'clock Eastern, something around there, which was really refreshing. I got home late because I actually went out to the movies last night for the first time, and it feels like forever. But in-laws watched The Baby and went to a new restaurant in Tampa called Whiskey Cake. If you're ever in the Tampa Bay area, I highly recommend it. Or if you live in the Dallas, Texas area, there's a couple of other locations in Texas as well. But this is a very Texas style restaurant, and they had like over 300 bottles of whiskey. So as you can imagine, this is definitely right up my alley. And the food was really good. Everything is like mesquite smoked and everything like that. Cocktails were good, and then they do whiskey flights. So I'm going to get into a little bit of whiskey talk just because I started, and we can get back to the fights later. You guys aren't that interested in my opinion about the fights, are you? So I got an Irish whiskey flight, and it was really good. So they bring you out 4 whiskeys. I think they do like 1.5 ounce pours, and they have different ones. You could do a bourbon flight, you could do a Scotch flight. I think there was a rye whiskey flight and Irish whiskey. So I'll tell you the one I enjoyed the most, and it was one called Connemara, which is a single malt peated Irish whiskey. Now, Irish whiskey typically is like very smooth finish, vanilla-y flavors, not too woody, not too oaky, not too smoky, none of that. That's not typical of Irish whiskey. But this Connemara is a peated whiskey, which means it's got a smoky flavor to it, almost like a Scotch, but a little bit woodier. So whereas Scotches will be like a peaty smoke, so they take this moss called peat moss, and they burn it and use the smoke to dry out the barley, and then that's what gives the Scotch the smoky flavor. So that's what they did with this Irish whiskey, which is very unorthodox for Irish whiskey, but that's why I really enjoyed it. And then I had a Redbreast, which is a 12-year Irish whiskey, and I believe they do it in oak barrel, so it's like really mellowed out, and that was really nice. So after that, I went to the movies. I saw the movie Us, the new Jordan Peele movie, which was excellent. I'm a big fan of horror movies. I liked Get Out. I thought that was a really cool, different movie. I think his directing style is really awesome. And this movie, Us, is more straight horror, whereas Get Out was kind of like suspense, like what the fuck is going on here? Yeah, Us is much more of a horror film, which I enjoyed. I thought it was really good. I think he's an excellent director. I would definitely look forward to his next film, whatever that may be. I hope it's a horror movie, because it's pretty much all I watch. I watch fights and I watch horror movies, and I enjoy whiskey and beer with either of those things. So that was kind of cool movie. And then when I got home, it was, we were into the main card a little bit. So I liked that it was over early so I could go back and watch some of the other fights. But I'm not going to bullshit you guys. I did not catch all of this card. I watched everything on the main event. I saw some highlights from the prelims, and I'll get into that. But let's talk about the co-main event now. Curtis Blaydes and Justin Willis. These guys had some kind of drama going into this where Justin Willis was talking about Curtis Blaydes' dad or something. He was like, your dad can't help you. And Curtis Blaydes kept his mouth shut. And then when that cage door shut, he beat the fuck out of Justin Willis for 3 rounds. Now, this is not the kind of performance that most people are going to appreciate. I appreciated the fuck out of this performance from Curtis Blaydes. I love seeing this kind of one-sided domination from guys. And if this is not entertaining to you, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, maybe mixed martial arts is not your sport. Maybe it's not something that you enjoy as much as you think you do, because this is the example I go back to time and time again. Have you ever taken a grown man and held him on the ground who does not want to be held there? Just a regular person. And how difficult that is to do. Now take a professional athlete who's really strong, really explosive, really big, and really powerful. And also, he wants to punch you in the face once he does get up. The way Curtis Blaydes held Justin Willis down for 3 rounds was masterful. The way he was hit. I think his ride time might have been 15 minutes in this fight, and that's not much of an exaggeration. He got him down, and he would not let him up. Justin Willis was doing everything he could, and you could just see the look of desperation on his face. I think Willis landed 1 significant strike in this fight. Out of the 3 judges, I think the scores were 30-27, 30-26, 30-25. I would lean more towards the 30-25 score, because I think it was just that dominant. I mean, Justin Willis did nothing to Curtis Blaydes. He wasn't able to stop the takedown. And at the end, Curtis Blaydes was like, go home and work on your wrestling. And I thought that was awesome. So Curtis Blaydes, one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division. He's a junior college wrestler. Heavyweights typically are not very wrestling heavy in MMA. And that's because a lot of big guys don't get into wrestling. I mean, obviously you have your Daniel Cormiers and your Brock Lesnar's, but those are like the unicorns of the world. I mean, wrestling is usually a smaller guy's sport. You see a lot more. You'll see a lot more Henry Cejudos and and Ben Askren's than you will, Brock Lesnar's. But again, just a fantastic performance by Curtis Blaydes. I can't stress that enough. And then he got a little emotional at the end, not like he was crying or anything, but still pissed off at Justin Willis because the guy was talking about his family, and he was able to keep it composed. He went in there, he put the beating on him, and then he still felt like he needed to get something off his chest. So Curtis Blaydes calls out 3 of the guys ranked above him. So Junior Dos Santos, Francis Ngannou, and one more that's escaping my mind right now. I know some of you guys are yelling at your phones or yelling at your radios or yelling at your computers right now because I can't think of it. But I'm sorry, guys. I don't have any show notes or anything here, so I don't have the rankings in front of me. But whoever that guy is, Stipe Miocic. So he wants one of those 3, and I think that's an excellent call out. If he gets any one of those guys to bite. Ngannou, I don't see happening just because, we've seen that twice already. And yeah, it had unfortunate endings for Curtis Blaydes both times. And one time he got cut, and the second time was an early stoppage, TKO. So yeah, he'd be hard pressed to get that fight. I think Dos Santos would be the most likely just because he's, the most willing to throw down. Stipe, I think, is still holding out for that Cormier fight, man. He wants that bad. And say what you will about that. I don't really have an opinion on that strategy by Stipe. There's a lot of people going back and forth, like, oh, he's overrated. He got finished too quick, and then other people are like, Stipe deserves it. He was the winningest heavyweight champion in history, and I'm not on either side of the fence, guys. I just don't. I mean, I love Stipe. I think he's a great fighter. I love watching him fight. I just don't care about I just want to see him get in there. If it's against Cormier, that's fine. And if it's not, that's cool too. I'm going to watch Stipe fight every single time. So going down this card, we had John Makdessi and Jesus Pinedo. So Pinedo, young Peruvian fighter, 22 years old, I believe, taking a loss against the much more experienced Makdessi here. So I told you guys last week that this would be an exciting one because Makdessi has an exciting style, and Pinedo is a young kid, so I thought he would come at him with a lot of fire, but he didn't. So the thing about John Makdessi is he will fight you at your own pace, basically. He likes to counter strike, and whatever energy you give him is what he's going to give back to you. And he's not really going to increase the tempo on you. So my prediction was based on the fact that this is a young kid who's looking to prove a point. He would come in there, guns blazing against Makdessi. That wasn't the case. And Makdessi was just able to outpoint him and using his experience, and not a whole lot to see there. Then we had Hussier Formiga going against, I believe, the undefeated Davison Figueiredo, and Formiga pretty much dominated this fight. He's the number one flyweight. He should probably get to fight the champ Henry Cejudo, but there's a lot of drama going on there with Henry Cejudo trying to move up to bantamweight. And let's just talk about that because I don't have a whole lot to say about the rest of this card. I will talk about a couple of other fights, but let's get into the bantamweight drama right now. So last week, TJ Dillashaw releases a statement, and he basically said that, in a drug test that he took before his fight with Henry Cejudo, they found something irregular and he failed the drug test. He's going to have his team working on it. And in the meantime, he doesn't want to hold up the bantamweight division because it's unfair to the other fighters and to the fans. So he relinquished his title voluntarily. Now, a couple of things come to mind. Because USADA has caught a bunch of guys that were later to be found innocent, so to speak, or they didn't do exactly what was first thought when the test results came back. Josh Barnett comes to mind. Josh Barnett lost good 2 years of his career because of the USADA test. It turned out to be a mistake, and maybe it was a mistake with TJ, maybe not. You kind of have to wonder what he could have been taking. Obviously there's been a lot of accusations out there, especially coming from his former team, Team Alpha Male, saying, oh, he taught everybody to use steroids, which was kind of funny to me because it was Cody Garbrandt who said that at a press conference. He was like, oh yeah, TJ's on everything. He taught everybody at Team Alpha Male how to use steroids. But I guess what Cody forgot was that he's part of Team Alpha Male. So by saying that, he's kind of insinuating that he takes steroids. I guess just not the brightest match in the box. Not a smart statement, but you got to wonder what TJ was taking before this Henry Cejudo fight. Obviously, he's not taking any anabolic steroids that would help him to bulk up because was trying to cut down the flyweight. So that kind of eliminates that. My theory is that it's just some kind of banned diuretic that he was using to cut weight. Something silly like that. It's possibly could have been on some other kind of PD, but who knows really, but you got to give credit to TJ Dillashaw here. I know I was busting his balls personally, and I was posting some memes and stuff on Instagram, but that's just because I'm a lighthearted guy. I don't like to I'm like to make light of situations like this and make jokes out of it. But you got to give a lot of credit to TJ because he could have held on to his title and appealed this and held up the division and everything like that. But he did relinquish it, you know, and that was a stand up move. I mean, it was probably, the team he has around him advised him to do that and everything like that. But, for such a fierce competitor like TJ Dillashaw to say, all right, you guys go on without me while I sort this out. And then I'll be back. And I'm sorry, guys. That's a stand up move. You got to give it up to TJ Dillashaw for that. Now, as this unfolds, we got to find out what it was he did and what he tested positive for. Again, I assume there's some kind of banned diuretic that he was using to make the weight, which I hope he never does again. So at bantamweight, we have an interesting situation now because supposedly TJ and Henry were very close to signing a fight. So, okay, do you give Henry that fight for the bantamweight title because he was already going to fight TJ, or does that go away now? And do you make him go back to flyweight and defend his title there against Formiga? Then you also have Marlon Moraes, who was kind of put on the back burner because of the whole TJ Henry thing. He even took an extra fight after already earning the title shot. So, okay, those are the two guys that you probably put in there for an interim. Henry has a win over the former champion TJ, and Marlon has earned his spot. But then you have, Aljamain Sterling. Yeah, there's an interesting dialogue there because he has the loss to Marlon Moraes. Do you put those two in there? And he's been on a tear lately. Definitely deserving of a title shot. And then you got Pedro Munoz, coming out of the woodwork with a knockout over Corey Garbrandt. Recency effect. He's got the most recent win out of this batch of guys, so he threw his name in the hat, and why not? I think what probably happens is you do Munoz and Aljamain Sterling, and then you do Moraes and Cejudo. And I don't know where Dominic Cruz is in all of this. I don't know if he's injured or, how he fits into this picture. If Dominic Cruz is in the picture, I would say you do Aljamain Sterling and Dominic Cruz, and the winner of that gets the winner of Cejudo and Moraes. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks if you're a flyweight right now because nobody's really paying attention to you. Jussier Formiga had a completely dominant performance last night, and nobody's going to talk about it because everybody wants to know what's going to happen next with bantamweight, and Henry Cejudo kind of, gets lumped in with that conversation just because, he's got the win over Dillashaw, and, maybe he can insert himself into that title picture, maybe not. If you don't give it to Cejudo, I think Moraes and Sterling is the fight to make. I think that's a marketable fight. That's something that can sell. But over the last 2 years, if you look at the highlight reel of these two guys, Aljo and Moraes, just phenomenal. You got crazy submissions. You've got, flying kick knockouts. Really, really good stuff. I think that's a fun fight. All right, let's jump back into Fight Night 148. So we had Luis Pena with a unanimous decision over Steven Peterson. Now, you guys know how much of a pet peeve it is for me when guys don't make weight. Luis Pena is 6'3", and he was trying to make 145 pounds. Now, this is not a guy with a high body fat percentage that, needed to lose weight and drop down a weight class. This is a guy who decided, I'm going to suck myself all the way down to try and get an advantage over smaller guys in a fist fight. He missed weight by over 3 pounds. He still had time to cut more weight, and he declined. Instead, he just paid the fine. I think it was 30% of his purse to Steven Peterson. And, Dominic Cruz said it best. It's sanctioned cheating. Obviously you have another cage fighter that you've agreed to fight with. They're not going to walk away and say, no, I'm not going to take a paycheck at all because you missed weight. And the size advantage isn't even a big deal. 3 pounds is not a big deal. I mean, we just saw, I just gave you guys a whole bunch of examples, Pettis moving up and fighting Wonderboy, and Masvidal knocking out Till, and Robert Whitaker, and all the other examples I gave you guys. It's not the size, it's the principle. You agree to fight at a certain weight, and then you say, no, on second thought, I don't feel like making it. So here, I'll just give you some money, and I'm not going to cut the rest of this weight. I'm not going to suck myself down anymore. I'm going to rehydrate, so I can have more of an advantage over you. And that's fucked up. That's really fucked up. I really hate when guys do shit like this. If you feel like you can't compete at a certain weight and you need to suck yourself down and move down, fine, do it. I'm not a fan of it. I'm more a fan of seeing guys move up and compete at a healthy weight. It's fine. If you feel like, moving down a weight class is the right move for you, then, get a nutritionist and talk to the people around you and find out if you can do it safely. But, don't quit at the weight cut and then show up to the fight and still expect people to give you the same amount of respect. So Steven Peterson and his coaches wouldn't shake Luis Pena's hand at the end of this fight. Now, I can kind of see both sides on this one too. Pena had extra time to cut the weight. He could have done it. He didn't. He chose not to. He quit. He gave up on the weight cut, which, that's half the job. Half the job is to make the weight that you agreed to fight at, and the other half is to get in a cage and fight the fight. On the other side of the coin, with Peterson, it's like you knew he missed the weight. You decided to fight him anyway. He was the better man that night. It's probably not because of those 3 extra pounds. I mean, yeah, it's probably a little bit of an advantage, but not that much to make it. And it was a close fight too. So as fucked up as it was, I still say shake the guy's hand. You still agreed to compete. You competed. You guys both did your best, and then at the end of it, shake the guy's hand. You don't have to be his best friend or anything like that. But I get the argument like, oh, we don't respect him because he quit on the weight cut. I get that too. So probably spent more time talking about this than I needed to. Macy Barber looked okay last night against JJ Aldrich. She almost got knocked out in the first round. Aldrich landed a nice straight left, sent Macy Barber flying back into the cage, and she dropped her another time. And she showed some resilience for the youngest fighter on the roster, 20 years old. She showed she could take a punch and come back, and she got the TKO the second round. She looked pretty good. Marlon Vera with a TKO just a minute into the first round against Frankie Science. I did not see that fight, but just reading the results, that's very impressive to me. So I need to go back and check that one out. Randa Marcos armbar submission over Angela Hill in the first round. That's impressive as well. I got to go back and check that one out. And I can't tell you this from having witnessed it, but I heard that Bryce Mitchell and Bobby Moffett had an awesome fight on the prelims that went the distance. Bryce Mitchell coming away with a unanimous decision. I do plan on going back to watch that one, but I'm not going to bullshit you guys, pretend like I watched it. I just heard through the grapevine that it was a good fight, and I want to check it out. So if I'm missing anything else from this card, if there's anything else I really need to go back and check out, please do reach out and let me know on social media. You guys know how to get a hold of me at MMA on the Rocks. Let's look forward to next weekend. And man, I feel like I'm saying this every week, but it's been nonstop events, and not a bad problem to have. unless you like really want to have a social life outside of MMA. But you guys have the option to just, not tune in and listen to me talk about it later on. I kind of feel obligated to watch all these things. But this one coming up, man, this is a fucking barn burner. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. UFC on ESPN2. And if you want to highlight mixed martial arts at an elite level, man, can you make a better fight than Edson Barbosa and Justin Gaethje? I mean, these are two guys who are 100% game every time they step in there, and they're not going to stop throwing until somebody falls down and doesn't get up. That's just the kind of fighter both of these guys are. Now, they're both very different. They both have outstanding leg kicks. Barbosa has incredible timing and great cardio. Justin Gaethje is just a madman. He gets in there, he gets in the pocket, he wants to fight in a phone booth, so to speak, and just swing on you. Barbosa is a little more methodical. He likes to use his timing. He likes to place his shots. I'd have to give a grappling advantage to Justin Gaethje since he's the collegiate wrestler, but you'll never see him shoot for a takedown, so that doesn't really matter. Every now and then you'll see him pick somebody up and throw him on the floor, but my money would not be on this fight going to the ground. So that's just an awesome fight. I mean, if you want to put a bet on somebody, like, good luck, flip a fucking coin. You guys know I don't give fight picks. But even if I did, fuck, man, I don't know what to tell you. This is like, this is going to be like whoever lands more big shots, and is able to knock the other guy out. I don't know. So the co-main event, we got David Branch and Jack Hermanson. David Branch, he's a guy, you never know what you're going to get. Maybe he's going to knock somebody out in the first round, and, maybe he's just going to putter around for 3 rounds and lose a decision. But, that kind of makes him worth watching because you really never know. You could get an outstanding performance. You could get a dud, but why not roll the dice? I mean, he's in there with Jack Hermanson, who's coming off a submission win over Gerald Meerschaert, also fighting on this card against Kevin Holland. So big card for middleweights. And then potential fight of the night, in my opinion, Josh Emmett and Michael Johnson. The main event aside, this is potential fight of the night. These are two guys with really fast hands. Both have really crisp boxing. Michael Johnson, obviously a great wrestler, but again, you're probably not going to see him use it. He's going to want to stand with Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett hasn't been in there, I think, since he fought Jeremy Stevens, and that was a fantastic fight. And then if you're into the female strawweights, we got Karolina Kowalkiewicz and the karate hottie Michelle Waterson. So that's an awesome strawweight matchup right there. These are two ladies who like to stand and strike. Michelle Waterson does have a little bit better of a submission game, but again, kind of the theme of this card, I would imagine it's not going to go to the ground. But if Michelle Waterson wanted to take it there, I think she probably could. Karolina has good submission defense, but a good takedown defense, but Michelle Waterson is a little bit more experienced in MMA. So then what else we got here? Alexa Grasso, she's coming off another this is another female strawweight fight. Alexa Grasso coming off the loss to Tatiana Suarez, who a lot of people are already labeling as the next big thing in the strawweights. They already think she's going to be the champ one day, and hard to argue against it. Tatiana Suarez is a beast in this division. So Alexa Grasso trying to rebound off that loss against the undefeated Marina Rodriguez. So that should be a really awesome contest there. Uh, let's see. I already said Kevin Holland and Gerald Meerschaert. Yeah, I've been high on Gerald Meerschaert for a long time. He's coming out of the Rufus Sport camp, so he's training with Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley and Anthony Pettis and all those guys, and I think he's really talented. Kevin Holland is going to be a really tough test for him, though. So Meerschaert trying to rebound off that loss to Jack Hermanson, and Kevin Holland is coming off a submission victory. Both of these guys have losses to Thiago Santos, who, has since moved up to light heavyweight. So, see if there's anything else worth pointing out on this card. Nothing else really jumping out at me. If Jeff were here, he would probably point out one more for you guys, but we're going to have to go without that. So, reach out to Jeff if you want to know his pick for what the fight to watch is for next week. But overall, this is going to be a great card. I mean, this main event in itself is worth tuning in for. All right, guys. So we did some recapping. We did some previewing. I talked about movies, talked about booze. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. So I'm going to go enjoy the rest of this Sunday night and probably have a drink. And I hope the rest of you are able to do the same, or at least find your happy place wherever that is. I mean, if you're listening to this later in the week and you're at work, then, just think about getting out of work and going to jiu-jitsu, or going for a run, or getting to the gym, or going to the bar and having a drink, whatever it is you like to do, going bowling. I don't know what the fuck you guys do. So reach out to me and let me know. You guys know how to get a hold of me at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can send me an email, MMAonTheRocks@gmail.com. And please go to the website, MMAonTheRocks.com. Every Monday, I'm going to be writing a new article. I believe this Monday's article is going to be about fighters moving up in weight. So something that I was talking about a lot about on the podcast today. The article is going to be a little bit more detail oriented, some more examples, a little bit more research behind it. The articles I actually put some thought into. It's not like the podcast here where I just plug and go every week and say whatever's on my mind and just talk for an hour straight until I get tired of talking. The articles, I actually do put some thought into them. So please go check those out. Share those on your social media platforms. If you so desire, it always helps. It helps when you guys share the episodes, and leave reviews, please. If you're listening on, Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Stitcher, or wherever you're listening, please do leave a review. It does help quite a bit. All right. That's all I got for this week. So until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye.